Today, about 16% of Earth's land is protected in some capacity, but despite this effort, Earth's landscapes, flora, and fauna have taken a tremendous toll from global conflict, even in protected areas. From 1950 to 2000, more than 80% of wars overlap with biodiversity hotspots, which has led to extreme habitat loss and has decimated ecological systems that are vital to the functioning of our planet. Today, we are going to be looking into the effects of conflict on protected lands and how we might be able to use transboundary parks as a tool for peace. The Industrial Revolution brought to Europe a vast arsenal of new weapons that the European powers were eager to use upon each other. Among the many atrocities of the world wars, land around the world took a near fatal blow. During World War I, the vast forests of Europe were harvested to solve the timber needs of Britain, Germany, and America. Henri Barbusse, a French poet and soldier, recaptures his experience in World War I, writing, "Frightful loads of dead and wounded men alter the shape of the plains. Everything appears turned over, full of rottenness and smelling of disaster." The environmental destruction continued in the Second World War, especially during the United States island hopping campaign, where the Marine Corps would use bulldozers and flamethrowers to clear islands of trees and grass so that airstrips could be built upon the coral base of these islands. Even after intense firebombing campaigns against the main Japanese island, the United States dropped 2 nuclear bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Ignoring the immediate destruction of these blasts, the environment still suffers from increased radiation to this day. After the environmental destruction of the world wars, conflict continued to extract a vast toll on land and wildlife. In 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson authorized military offensives in the bombing of North Vietnam. While the U.S. saw initial successes, the Viet Cong, a partisan force that partnered with the North Vietnamese army, began using guerrilla tactics within the rainforests of Vietnam, leading to the loss of countless American and South Vietnamese soldiers. In order to combat this guerrilla fighting group, the U.S. began to spray a defoliant known as Agent Orange over much of the Vietnamese forest. Over the course of the war, Vietnam lost about 7,700 square miles of forest, accounting for almost 15% of Vietnam's forested land. Napalm also played a massive role in the destruction of Vietnam's forests, especially in U Minh. U Minh was a major Viet Cong stronghold, and napalm was used extensively to raise the ground cover. By the end of the offensive, about 80% of the mangrove delta had burned. The ecological damage present in the Vietnam War highlights how much of an effect conflicts can have on the land. As the world moved into a modern era, the ideas of national parks and protected land began to spread outwards from the United States, but so has the power and devastation of modern weapons. This is a map of all the protected lands within Africa, with red representing parks that have had more than 1 year of conflict within their borders in the last 50 years, and blue representing the remainder. However, many of the parks represented by the color blue have been established within the last decade. In 1975, Ghana Rajau National Park, located on the lower border of Mozambique and Zimbabwe, was established. This park, nicknamed the Palace of Elephants, captures the pristine wilderness of southern Africa and covers 1.25 million acres. The park's Shiholo Cliffs are known as one of the most spectacular landscapes in the world, but in 1977, disaster struck in the form of the Mozambique Civil War, and the park was turned into a battlefield occupied by rebels. As the government fought against the rebels within the area, the brutal conditions led to the hunting of animals for meat and sport, and the poaching of elephants for their ivory tusks. While these effects were terrible for Mozambique, the consequences did not stop at the arbitrary borders on a map. Zimbabwe is also home to Ghana Rajau landscapes, the totality of which is called the Ghana Rajau Trans-Frontier Park. Due to pervasive hunting by the rebels, the Zimbabwean government assisted the Mozambican government and pushed the rebels out of the region. However, by the end of the Civil War, over 95% of all large mammals in this park had been killed. This conflict highlights how important of a role parks play in facilitating cooperation between countries sharing transboundary parks. What is dire to remember is that this process of conflicts destroying protected land is no old-school thing used by the rugged dictators of the past. And perhaps one of the most shocking events of the 2020s, Russian forces invaded the sovereign nation of Ukraine. Fighting within the Kherson region of Ukraine has resulted in multiple fires in the Black Sea Biosphere Reserve. This resulted in mass destruction of trees and unique habitats required by the native birds. As the largest nature reserve in Ukraine, this area plays an extremely important role in the natural processes within the Black Sea. Moreover, Russian troops have already entered or conducted military operations in more than a third of Ukraine's protected lands. Many animals, including the gray wolf, red fox, raccoon dog, lynx, boar, and the endangered Przewalski horse, have been driven from their natural habitats due to the fighting. Wars created a brutal reality for much of the protected lands around the globe, leaving areas desolate of life and beauty. We see, however, that war can be prevented and nature can prosper through the development of protected land. While nobody would think of the Korean Demilitarized Zone as a park or even a nature reserve, the reality is that this 160 miles long and 2.5 mile wide stretch of land is almost exactly that. Since the establishment of the DMZ in 1953, there has been an unintentional development of a habitat for rare flora and fauna. This includes the red-crowned and white-naped crane species native to Korea, and the regrowth of the Asian black bear population. Furthermore, this protected sliver of land has been instrumental in the relative peace between the two nations of Korea. The out-of-sight, out-of-mind mentality perhaps may play a large role in peace as a whole. The idea of using protected land to prevent conflicts is far from a new idea. In peace parks, conservation, and conflict resolution, the idea of using parks as a tool for peace is greatly expanded upon. One of the greatest examples from this book is about the Liberian Civil War. The United Nations Security Council Resolution 1647 states that peace within Liberia can only be achieved if ex-combatants find employment outside of militias, rebels are denied from illegal exploitation of resources, and if countries in the region cooperate to end violence. Parks could help solve all of these different tasks. Peace parks, as they are known, have the potential to provide more jobs than just logging, with over 1,000 workers currently employed to manage 1 million hectares of land in the country. Furthermore, the parks can be used to connect people of a nation that are split between the borders of 2 or more states. The Mano people live on both sides of the Cavalry River that divides Liberia and the Ivory Coast. Parks between these nations would keep the border demilitarized and help reinforce community security. However, establishing national parks can be controversial even when they are done with the best intentions. In 2003, Liberia's only national park at the time, Sapo, was expanded by 37%. In response to this enlargement, a force of over 4,000 gold miners and hunters from the region descended upon Sapo. Many of these invaders were ex-combatants from African wars and were ready to take up arms against the government of Liberia to protest. However, through the help of non-governmental organizations and local people, Sapo's guards were able to conduct an information campaign that emphasized the importance of the protected area with the local villages to help peacefully remove the miners and hunters from the park. NGOs can play an invaluable role in the creation and maintenance of protected lands. Additionally, we can see in Afghanistan that there are a number of transboundary parks, all of which have helped alleviate the amount of conflict with its neighbors. The Tongatang Mountains in the borders of Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Afghanistan have an existing United Nations development program with Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. The protected area is planning to incorporate Afghanistan to increase regional security and cooperation with the states that share the transboundary park. Climate change has been accelerating over the last decade and will continue to cause mass havoc on our world's environment. The world has been coming together to cut carbon emissions and stop climate change, but timelines to reach goals keep getting pushed, and financial incentives to keep reducing will continue to play a role in preventing the green transition. Peace parks offer an additional path that states can take to increase cooperation, ease conflict, and achieve climate goals. Domestic parks can also serve as an economic boon and a way to reach conservation goals. Our relationship to the land we call home is what connects us as a society, and through the protection of our most important lands, perhaps we can find the courage to stop conflicts and find our humanity.